It is a blessing to get to meet you all. I wish that I had known Sister Susan longer. I only met her briefly at Ryan's baptism, but I'm finding out that she was an extraordinary woman. Susan Britt, age 33, passed away on Monday, July 1st, 2024. She was born on December 30th, 1990 in Jackson, Tennessee to Randy and Sonia Britt. Susan was preceded in death by her paternal grandparents, Ellis and Norris Britt, and maternal grandfather, Charles Joyner. She is survived by her parents, Randy and Sonia Britt of Blue Goose, brother Ryan Britt of Blue Goose, maternal grandmother Betty Joyner, and fur baby Toby. Susan's favorite Bible verse was Romans 8:18. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. So that's a great outlook, isn't it? It's the best outlook. I had some things come to my mind last night and this morning, and they had to do with, of course, life and death. Philippians 1:19, Paul would write, after dealing with a few other issues, making mention of a few issues, he said, for I know that this shall turn to my salvation through your prayer and the supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, according to my earnest expectation and my hope, that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but that with all boldness, as always, so now also Christ shall be magnified in my body, whether it be by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. But if I live in the flesh, this is the fruit of my labor. Yet what I shall choose, I wot not. For I am in a strait betwixt two, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. Nevertheless, to abide in the flesh is more needful for you. Now, when we read of the word hope in the scriptures, it's not used in the same context that we use it, hope, in our English language today. Most of the time when people say, I hope this will happen, what they really mean to say is, I wish this is going to happen. When the word hope is used in the scriptures, it means I expect this to happen earnestly. It's an earnest expectation that I have. And hope always has something in view, always has the future in view, never the past. Hope is something that is not seen. Hope, Paul says, if a man sees it, why does he still hope for it? If he's already got it, why does he hope for it? So hope is an expectation. And Paul tells this church at Philippi, he says, it's better for me to go on and be with the Lord. And we know that it's, when we're at home in the body, Paul says we're absent from the Lord. And so it's always difficult, though, to be separated from our loved ones. It's in this life. From our perspective, it is we want them to continue on just like they always have. Right. We want things to be the way that they always were. We want still to have them, to hold them, to love on them, to enjoy and make more memories with them. That's from our perspective. But from God's perspective, they're not home yet. But when they're absent from the body and they're called home, then God has them there with him. They're home. You know, in Psalms, Brother Wayne probably knows the exact psalm, says, David said, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Right. It's difficult for us, isn't it? It's hard for us to let them go. It's hard for us and we grieve, and there's a great difficulty and mourning in death. But God rejoices because really, what's the difference between a child that's even unborn and the oldest man that ever lived? What's the difference? Time and experiences are the only difference. From God's perspective, they're just the same even the unborn, as if they've lived 120 years. From God's perspective, they're his children at the beginning, they're his children at the end. They'll always be his children. Right. I like that, don't you? That gives me great assurance to know that the sovereign God, our Creator, is not bothered by anything. He's not delayed by anything. That's good stuff. Now, Paul says, and while we're in this body, we're separated from the completeness of the Lord. That doesn't mean that the Lord doesn't interact with us or touch us, or that we can't feel him while we're in this body. That doesn't mean that we're totally absent from the Lord when we're in this body, but we're absent from the completeness in the Lord when we're in this body. That's what Paul means. Now, another proof is 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 6. Paul says, therefore, we are always confident, knowing that whilst we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight. We are confident, I say, and willing rather to be absent from the body. Did you hear that? Paul says we're willing rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord. Look, if the best that you got is down here, you're gonna, if you think this is all that there is, you may be disappointed. We don't want to be disappointed, do we? I tell you what, when we can't even imagine, you know, that 8 and 18, Romans 8 and 18, her favorite verse. For I reckon, that's a good old country term, isn't it? I reckon. I'm from Mississippi. We used to say that all the time. I reckon. That means from the best information I got, I've made this determination. But a reckoning it's really a financial, an accounting term that means that what it is what it is. And Paul says, for I reckon, I have done all the tallying, and this is the sum of the matter, that the sufferings that we experience in this life are not even worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us. That means no matter how bad it gets for you here, talk to Job and see how bad it was. No matter how bad it gets down here, the bad don't even compare with just 1 second of the good and glory. It don't even compare. Can't even compare it. Now, Paul says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, In verse 13, he says, "But I would not have you be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope." Did y'all hear that? It didn't say they didn't have a wish. It said they didn't have a hope. That means they didn't expect anything. They didn't have any earnest expectation. There's a lot of people that sorrow. Paul's not telling you not to sorrow. He's telling you to sorrow, but not to sorrow like those that have no hope. We ought to sorrow, and it is hard to lose our loved ones. It's hard to lose those that are dearest and closest to us. And we ought to sorrow. Man, I tell you what, when I see somebody at a funeral and their close relative dies and they're there and stoic and hard, I tell you what, and everybody grieves in their different way. Don't get me wrong. But I have to think, man, how close were they if they don't shed a tear? If it doesn't move them in some way, if they're not distressed at some point about the loss, I wonder, are they sorrowing at all? But everybody sorrows in a different way, don't they? Some people internalize it. It may hit you, Brother Randy, 2 weeks from now. It may hit you a year from now. But it will hit you. Paul says, "I wouldn't have you ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again," y'all believe that? Yes. I believe it. I believe it not only because this word says it, I believe it because God authored it in my heart. That's how I know it. I didn't just take somebody's word for it. I took God's word on it. Not the words on the page, the word he authored in my heart. Now, he says, "If we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him." Did you know that Susan is sleeping in Jesus right now? Will God bring with him? "For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep." That doesn't mean that you're going to keep them from coming back with him. That means that you're not going to precede them or go before them. Now, we're not going to precede them which are asleep. "For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord." And he says, "Wherefore comfort one another with these words." You know, that's what we're doing today, isn't it? We're comforting each other with the words, the only words that can comfort. You know, it's an awkward thing to speak to someone that's lost a loved one. What do you say? And it's awkward for them because they don't know what to tell you back. It's a strange thing, isn't it? How many of y'all feel awkward? I do. What can you say? Well, you can say this because you can bank on the Lord's death, burial, and resurrection. You can say that I don't know what life's going to be like for you now, but one day when the Lord splits the heavens wide open and the trump from God sounds and he gives that shout, and my friends, it's not a shout of pain. It's not a shout of distress. It's a shout of victory. That victory he shouted on the cross. You know, when he gave that cry and he said, "It is finished," it wasn't a cry like, "Oh my gosh." It was a cry of victory. And did you know he was in his full vigor when he let out that cry? He was not weak at all. Y'all don't know my mama, some of you do, but on her deathbed, and you've seen it when people they're at the point of death and their body's so weak and they just mumble and nothing comes out. My friends, when the Lord said it is finished, he was in full vigor and he gave up the ghost. They didn't take it from him. He gave up the ghost. And because he lives, we live too. And did you know, if you believe that he died, I trust all of you believe that he rose again. And if he rose again, he's coming again. And if he's coming again, he's coming to get you and me and all of his children that he paid for, because he's a good businessman. You know, the Lord, when have y'all ever gone to the grocery store and you got out and you paid for something that was your milk or something, and you got out to the car and you forgot to put it in your car and you went back to get it and it wasn't there? My friends, that's not the way the Lord's going to do it, because he's going to get what he paid for. Y'all like that? I like it. It sounds good to me. You know, there is a sting of death. But Paul in the 15th chapter of 1 Corinthians is mocking it. He seems to be mocking the grave when he says, "O grave, O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory?" Right now it seems like the grave is victorious. Oh, but not finally. They can't help. The grave is not going to be able to help but give up its prey. And the Lord's going to take us home to be with him in glory. That's good news to me. Comfort one another with these words. May God bless you is my prayer.
Amen. Thank you.